what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it.
LSU seems to be in pretty good shape as far as their wide receiver room goes next year, despite the fact that you're going to lose Malik Neighbors and others. And we have some guys that we think are returning that could be some key guys that Taylor listed here. Kyron Lacey, who to me has been kind of up and down at LSU. Was he the one that had the drop against Florida State the last play of the third quarter, or was that Brian Thomas?
That's his big thing.
Was Lacey.
He's struggled with drops since he's been here.
That's what I thought. He does a good job of working himself open. I think that he had good chemistry with the quarterbacks here, whether it was Nussmeier in there, whether it was Jaden Daniels. And he has really good fundamentals. He's a sound route runner. He's a good wide receiver. But to Taylor's point, it seems like in the biggest moments, he does kind of struggle with those drops. I think of a guy like maybe like a Devery Henderson. I know they're a different mold wide receiver, but that's kind of the vibe that I get from Kyron Lacey. And then Chris Hilton's a guy that we talked about so much during his recruitment and starting with his freshman season. He was going to come in and make a big impact. Haven't seen much of that consistently. That might just be due to a numbers game. Maybe he just needs some more opportunity, but doesn't seem like he's really flashed. And then Aaron Anderson, I'd argue, has been a disappointment since he got to LSU. He was really hyped up by media, fans alike, to be this really dynamic guy, especially in the punt return game. But he hasn't even really returned that many punts. And I hate to say this, but it reminds me a little bit of Jonathan Giles, right? Somebody who came in as a transfer, was supposed to be really good. The difference was he was coming in from Alabama, so that made you feel really good about it. But for whatever reason, maybe he's not practicing well, maybe he hasn't been as dynamic, I don't know, but he just is not popped for whatever reason. And we all heard the soundbite. I believe we played it on this show from Nick Saban after the LSU-Alabama game. He went up to his face after the game and straight up told him, you'd be playing more here than you are there. That had to be kind of a low moment for Aaron Anderson, but hopefully he stays and he pops off a little bit more next season. And then you have the younger guys, the Jaylen Brown, not the Jaylen Brown from the Celtics, and Shelton Sampson, who had a whole movement to get him at LSU, whatever the hashtag was, 5 stay home or whatever it was. So the young guys, you see the potential. Some of them have already given you some production. We'll see if LSU is able to keep all those guys, and we'll see if some of them at least are able to step up a little bit more next season.
Yeah, the question LSU is going to have to ask in this offseason is, can Kyron Lacey be the number one receiver? If he controls his drops, I think he can, because we've talked about it. After the catch, he might be the most dynamic receiver you have. When he gets his hands on the football, his ability to turn upfield is excellent. He has good speed. He's 6'3". He's 210. He runs good routes. He's got it a little bit under control more the last couple weeks. You mentioned the big drop against Florida State. After that, Chris Hilton kind of beat him out for the number 3 job. Hilton goes down. Then what happens? Kyron Lacey takes over that role, and you really haven't seen Chris Hilton since then. So he's been a lot better. I certainly think he has the ability to be a number 1 receiver. The drops are an issue, but if you can get that under control, he certainly has the talent. I feel really good about Chris Hilton as well. I thought he looked good in his time on the field. So, whether Aaron Anderson works out or not, we'll see. Jaylen Brown's talented. Shelton Sampson's talented. They're both 5 stars that were freshmen a year ago. But, Mario, there are some guys in the transfer portal, and I know that Brian Kelly says he kind of wants to limit the number of transfers he takes this year. I think he said he wants to cap it somewhere under the 10 range. So he doesn't want to go over 10, and that's fine. LSU actually offered a transfer portal wide receiver yesterday. It was Xavier Thomas, who is transferring over from Mississippi State. He has an offer from LSU and an offer from Auburn. But most people right now think that he will make his way to Baton Rouge. When you look at him, he's a guy whose numbers don't necessarily jump off the table at you, but Mississippi State's offense was really bad last year, right? I mean, his freshman year, he only got in 2 games back in 2022, so we can throw that one out the window. I mean, he had 2 catches for 4 yards as a freshman. This past year, 40 receptions, just over 500 yards. He also had a touchdown, average over 12 yards per catch. So he was a solid possession receiver, putting him in a better offense with a better quarterback.
Yeah.
I think Denbrock and Nussmeier is an upgrade over Will Rogers and whatever you have. So he's a guy that, he flashed a little bit at Mississippi State. If you could put him in a better offense, he can make some plays for you.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. In that offense, those stats do pop off. Like, they don't sound great in a vacuum, but given what happened in Mississippi State, those are some pretty impressive numbers.
Yeah, and there are some guys that talking about your SEC brethrens that look like they're going to get a little bit better out of the transfer portal. For whatever reason, LSU did not go after these receivers. A lot of people wanted them. I mean, obviously the big name is Will Shepherd, the transfer from Vanderbilt. He's been really solid for about 3 years there up in Nashville. He's originally from Mandeville, Louisiana. He's crystal balled right now to go to Mississippi State. He has an offer in hand from them. As far as I know, LSU has not given him an official offer yet for whatever reason. Maybe they just like Xavier and Thomas better. Maybe he fits into their system. Also, Colin Lacey. He's a transfer from South Alabama, so he would be moving up slightly a level of competition. But Mario, I mean, the guy's numbers have been phenomenal the last 2 years. Over 2,000 yards receiving, 2022 and 2023 combined. This past season, 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's been really good at South Alabama. Looks like he's headed to College Station as we speak. Again, he's a guy that LSU reached out to a ton, but there are a couple big names that we could still look at. Bo Collins, you know that name from Clemson.
Yeah.
He's a guy that, he didn't make a ton of huge plays, but not unlike Mississippi State, their offense was kind of bad this year. It sputtered at times. Outside of Will Shipley, they didn't have a ton to work with. He had 500 yards receiving this year. He has 11 touchdowns, though, since his time at Clemson in 3 seasons. So he's a guy that has a nose for the end zone. And another guy out there is Julian Fleming. A lot of people know that name. He's an Ohio State transfer. His numbers were a little bit down this year, but he had a drop-off in quarterback play from C.J. Stroud to Kyle McCord. 2 years ago in 2022, that was kind of his big year. 500 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, over 15 yards per catch. So he's a big play receiver. You could come in. He could play outside. He could play in the slot. He's been really good, a really versatile guy. So if Kelly wants to dip into the transfer portal, he's got to decide what he thinks of these young guys. A Jaylen Brown, a Shelton Sampson, that's going to be the key to this. I think Kyron Lacey and Chris Hilton have a role on this team, regardless of who you bring in. Also, getting Lacey back is key. I don't think it's a guarantee he comes back. I definitely think he should. But if you get those 2 guys back, you see what you have in your younger guys. That'll depend on what they do in the portal. Obviously, Xavier and Thomas looks like he may make his way to Baton Rouge, but you could add 1 or 2 more receivers out there in the portal as well.
Yeah, good breakdown there. And Jason Bourgeois brings up a good point in the Bayou 4 chat as well. We can't forget about Mason Taylor. For whatever reason, he was not as productive this year. Not that he played bad by any stretch of the imagination, but LSU just spread the ball out a little bit more. It did not find Mason Taylor as much this season, but he's definitely a factor. We know what he can do as a receiving tight end. And I guess I will ask you this. Do you think that Jake Johnson draws any interest from LSU? I saw that he put his name in the transfer portal yesterday, the Texas A&M tight end who was originally committed to LSU when his older brother Max was with the Tigers, but obviously he went to A&M and Jake followed him. I know Max is heading to North Carolina. Do you think it's as simple this time around and Jake just follows his brother, or teams like LSU might have an opportunity to maybe bring Jake Johnson in?
If this was a year ago, I would have said absolutely, because if you go back and look at the kid's tape, he did really good things at Texas A&M. He's still one of the best prospects to ever come out of high school at the tight end position. I don't think they do, though. I still think there may be a little bit of bad blood with them and Max Johnson. Also, you're loaded at the tight end positions. You don't need Jake Johnson to come in here. I mean, you just had Jackson McGowan, who was a highly recruited transfer, our player out of high school last year. He's in the transfer portal because he didn't get on the field enough at LSU. You got Mason Taylor. You got Kamorian Pimpton. Mac Markway had a lot of good moments this year, blocking and receiving. He caught a big-time touchdown pass late in the season. Also, Trey'Dez Green from Zachary, the big 6'8", 6'7" tight end. He's committed to you. He's coming in next year as well. I don't think you need Jake Johnson. I mean, again, Kelly talks about how he wants to limit the number of transfers, build his team from the high school ranks. I think you're better served elsewhere at bigger positions of need.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.